500 years ago, because of selfishness, humanity throughout the continent was in a continuous war. Countless innocent people were dying. The silver dragon that had guarded these lands for many years regretted what was happening and intervened in humanity's affairs. He ended the wars and united many countries. That's when the Claremont Empire was formed, and that's when our whole story happens. Don't love her, for she is incurable, sick. The protagonists of this novel were Reke and her twin sister Rinsel, who had the love of the Duke of Valencia. The daughters of a duchy of which there are only 3 in the empire could get anything but health. Reke found herself on the brink of death more than once, and the year they both turned 20. Rike, despite her ailing body, was about to leave for the protagonist Ishar, whom she loved, but she died of a heart attack. Maybe, while reading this novel, the girl wanted to help her favorite heroine too much, and then one day, when she opened her eyes, she realized that she had become the younger sister of the terminally ill Reke. Now she is the protagonist of Rinsel Valencia. Presently, a female voice rang out from the twins' mansion. "Rin! Rinsel!" The girl runs down the hallway and calls out. Running into the room, the doors swinging wide open, the pink-haired girl shouted with joy and delight, "Rinsel!" She has some super awesome news. She's about to tell her. What happened? Rinsel asked a girl named Reke who ran into the room. After all, it was her twin sister. The heroine who read this novel, and found herself in Rinsel's body, lived well as Reke's twin sister. Reke began to tell how she had spoken to Mr. Ishar yesterday. They exchanged only a few words, to which Rinsel asked, "Is she really congratulating her? How come?" Reke ran into him in the corridor of the imperial palace. It was like this. She was walking down the corridor and saw Ishar-san. She said hello to him. The lord turned around and saw Reke and said, "Hello?" She asked him if he was very busy right now. "Yes, that's right," Reke confirmed. "And what did he answer?" Rinsel asked. He replied that of course he was busy and had to go, but Reke was so embarrassed that she blushed. She would have seen his robe develop like that, an incredible sight, said Reke. Reke seems very happy, Rinsel thought. She's all glowing after the story. The man Reke loves so much is the first prince of the Kerman Empire. The first prince's name is Richard Kerman. He was like the empress and diligently also loved to study. He also loved to change his outfits very much. The clothes and accessories he wore were immediately sold out. He was the best man in the empire, and in any establishment he frequented. Reke met him there and immediately fell in love with him at first sight. She trusted her sister very much, and always told her her most intimate things, as she did now when she came to my room. She told her that she was very fond of Mr. Richard. She hugged her sister and asked her what she thought. Would she be able to marry and live happily? But Rinsel thought, not telling her sister that no, she would marry a villain and not the Richard she loved, because she would be trying to avoid that fate. Rinsel kissed her sister on the forehead to comfort her in some way, but she doesn't know any of that. In the end, however, she can't upset her, so she says that Reke will definitely be happy with Richard. Reke realized after these words that her sister supports her the most, and she has only her. Rinsel asked if she loved her more than Richard, and the girl replied, "Of course she still asks. I love you very much," and tickled the girl, began to laugh, decided to confess more about the fact that she had heard her father trying to marry her off to Prince Hernan, there that demon of war. The second prince of the Kerman Empire, Hernan Claremont, is a villain of this world who has survived many battles due to his innate talent. Perhaps that was why he was called the Demon of War and the Demon of Death. He had a handsome appearance, but people avoided him. Emperor, fearing further developments, decided to make a political marriage in secret. However, Rinsel decided to calm her sister down and tell her not to worry so much. It's just a rumor. Rinsel is sure to help Reke, his favorite sister. When she first found herself in this body, she thought it was a dream, but Rinsel's memories immediately came over her, and she became real. It was at this moment, for the happiness of her only sister Reke, the wish of Rinsel she was ready to give her life, became also the wish of our heroine, who was reading this novel. Yes, their deaths are years away. How can Rinsel, that is, the heroine who read this novel, do just one thing? From the room came her father's voice. Screamed Rinsel! She, our heroine who has been reborn as Rinsel, will marry Prince Hernan. Rinsel, meeting her father in the parlor, told him how she felt about the prince. Father was surprised to ask what this sudden such news was. The Duke of Valencia's father. Rinsel told her father that she had fallen very much in love with the prince at first sight. My father was very surprised, asking, "What are you saying?" A few weeks ago, triumphant and leading the soldiers, Prince Hernan was so handsome, especially his robe, described all the same words her sister Reke had told her, only about Prince Richard. She decided to borrow those words from her sister Reke. Father sat there not understanding what the mantle was. What was so special about it? That mantle, that she had been so lured by this prince. If any of us sisters are bound to marry a prince, said the girl, well, her father firmly answered her that Rinzel only needed to know one thing. He was not going to marry off any daughter to a prince just because he supported him as heir to the throne. But Rinzel already knew all this, since she is the protagonist who read the novel. She already knew how it was going to be. This order of the emperor, which even the father cannot reject, so it was written in the novel. The Duke said he was curious. He would try to find out the details. Well, he had heard Rinzel's opinion. She could go. The girl replied that yes, all right, father, but thought to Reke she did. After leaving the room and closing the door behind him, the Duke stood still for a long time, pondering what Rinzel had told him. Well, as it turned out, there was more than one in the room. He turned to the man with the words, "Have you heard for yourself? Wants to be your bride? Do you mind?" he asked the prince standing behind the curtain. It was Prince Hernan. He stood there and heard everything perfectly. He figured it was still knitted by his father, and the princes went different legends to the war demon, afraid to approach each lady, so he had no experience with girls. But here, as it turned out, he had to hear the entire conversation of the Duke's second daughter. She had forced him to hide for a while to keep the conversation about the imperial family a secret. He never thought he'd hear something like that. And from Lady Rinzel. The prince was very surprised. He thought back to her words, how she'd said she'd fallen in love with the prince at first sight, and his robe was adorable. He wouldn't mind changing his bride at all, since they looked like the late Duchess, his wife. He blamed himself for the girls being born so weak. The Duke did his best to find any ways to help, but all the doctors he went to said they were very sad. But there is no potion that will make your daughters healthy. They all answered as one. That's how the Duke answered. There is only one thing left for him to do. It is despair. However, in the novel, the protagonist Richard, among the lines spoken quietly at Reke's funeral, told Reke why she was hiding the truth about being terminally ill. He would definitely find a way to save her, for in the Imperial Palace's vault, the vault of the Imperial Palace, there's something there that will save her and Rike. But in order to enter it, one must be a direct descendant of the Imperial family and obtain the permission of the first Silver Dragon Emperor. To get there, she must marry a direct descendant of the Imperial family and get the dragon's permission. So in a short period of time she'll have to play a wedding to someone she's never even met, Rinzel thought. And most importantly, the problem. She's walked into the Duke of Room's office, and her body is terribly weak. Upon recognizing that she was in Rinzel's body, our heroine, who had read the novel, thought it was a dream. It's been a week. Doesn't feel like a dream. I looked at myself in the mirror every day and checked. She didn't have a problem with the rest, but her stamina was poor. At this rate, she'll be dead before she even saves Reke. No money can buy health, Rinzel thought. The girl lay down on the bed to regain some strength, and noticed that a bruise had appeared on her leg from somewhere. Anyway, she feels sorry for Hernan, but she has to save Reke. While Rintel was musing, Reke ran into the room, very upset. She asked what was all this talk about Rintel marrying Prince Hernan? Rinzel rushed to reassure her sister Reke. Thought she seemed to have already heard all the news. The sisters hugged each other to calm down a bit. Reke, you know you can't live more years, said sister. Forgive her if this sounds harsh, but she doesn't have much time left, leaving the man she loves to make a marriage of convenience. Rinzel thinks it's too horrible looking into her sister's eyes, but she knows she needs to get to the vault faster to save her sister. But she can't tell her that. Reke, taking her sister's hand, said, for she too was sick. But Rinzel replied that she was healthier than all the living. But Prince Hernan, the demon of war, the demon of killing, said Reke. But Rinzel told her, look, he ended a long civil war in the Empire. On the day of the victory ceremony, when Prince Hernan returned, she fell in love with him at first sight, Rinzel said. Reke sat back and was surprised by those words. She asked what? She understood Reke's words about Prince Richard's robe, which looked great on him. Closing her eyes, Rinzel imagined a day when a pleasant breeze was blowing and the streets were filled with cheerful people, creating an atmosphere of joy. Reke, who chattered non-stop beside her, the girl stood on the balcony and watched the knights march. These are her memories. Rinzel, look, said Reke, Mr. Richard. Gorgeous. So it was very realistic, as if she had actually experienced it. That's what she was telling her sister. Reke was upset that her sister would have to marry such a prince. But Rinzel said, don't cry over her, this is the marriage she wanted, and the girl smiled very much. Rintel said that it would be better for Reke if she married the person she loved. Reke said that she loved her sister more than Mr. Richard. It is natural, said Rinzel, and the girls started talking about everything and tomorrow's weather. If it was good, They would go out in their new dresses and everything else until late at night. They talked until they fell asleep together. As the girls fell asleep, one of the sisters woke up to hearing some sounds. Rinsel. She wants to live, the sister said, and she would be glad if the girl survived. The next day that the voice of Prince Hernan rang out, suddenly came to their house. What happened? Walking down the corridor, Rinsel thought, why does the body feel so heavy? Barely had she reached this place. The maid announced that the prince had arrived and Mrs. Rinsel should come. Let it pass, said the prince, and Rinsel went to the door, hesitant to enter, but entered nevertheless. The prince asked, are you the lady? When he saw the girl. Why didn't Rinsel want to go around at once? Because she had never seen the prince before. But when she came in and saw him, she was stunned and said to him, yes, that's right, that's her. She couldn't believe it was Hernan. Allow me to introduce myself. He's your fiancé, Prince Hernan Clermont replied. Said the guy. He appeared much more majestic in person. A little earlier in Prince Hernan's mansion, while walking down the hallway, the prince called out to Gact. Approaching the prince, the lad said, did you call for him, your highness? The prince asked if what he wanted had appeared. In all his time serving the prince, this guy had only heard such a thing in urgent situations. Looks like this time, it's going to be something serious. Thinking to himself, he bowed and said, speak up. He will comply. He needs the best quality robe the Empire has to offer. The boy said yes, he'd get it right away. At first, the helper guy didn't hear it. He asked again, mantle? Said by the way, what a novelty. Hernan remembered that Richard's mantle looked good. The boy helper was startled and wondered what it was that had suddenly happened to him with the first prince's mantle. So now he was standing in that luxurious red velvet-colored robe. That robe was Richard's. Rinsel looked at that robe and thought it was quite luxurious, greeted the prince and said it was a pleasure to meet her. She is Rinsel Valencia, and bowed. But since Rinsel said nothing about the mantle, the prince immediately despaired somehow. He started tugging at that robe, pulling it off, adjusting it, as if on purpose to make Rendell notice. But the girl stood and stared, unable to figure out if there was something stuck on her robe or what, why he was yanking it all the time. She guessed and said, your highness Hernan, you have such a magnificent robe. After saying that, the prince immediately smiled and said thank you, have a seat. Randall noticed he smiled, his image different from what she had heard. Rinsel said, this may sound a little harsh, but you came to meet her because your marriage partner has changed. Hernan replied that yes, it would be strange to get acquainted at a wedding ceremony. Thank you for taking care of that, the girl replied. He seemed like a villain in the novel, but here the aura is different. Surprisingly, he's very delicate. And besides, she didn't expect to see him smile at all, Rinsel thought. Here's trouble, now he wants to see her again, the prince thought as he looked at the girl. Rinsel noticed that the prince showed a bit of shyness, seemingly affected by the words about the robe. She wondered if she should return to the subject. Your highness Hernan, your beautiful robe is slightly wrinkled, the girl said. But that gorgeous thing suits you very well. Where did you find it? She asked. Well, something made the prince nervous and hesitant. He didn't know what to say. I remembered that he was cute in the novel too. She didn't even think to see him like this, because she imagined him to be a villain already. The prince asked, lady, are you not afraid of him? Renzel replied, not at all. You're very nice, but thought, especially the reaction to the words about the robe, and laughed. Tea was brought, and they began to drink the tea. I guess it was true, said one of them. The other asked, what was it? Well, the thing at first sight, that's okay. Let's talk about that next time, the prince replied. Setting the cup down, he asked, and if there's anything else you think is great? Renzel wondered. That's probably besides the robe, right? And began to look around at the prince for something to think of, and had already begun to answer. But we'll continue with that afterwards. Richard's favorite place, Richard's mansion. Your Highness Richard, your attire is elegant today as well, came a girl's voice. You always have their admiration. It's going to become a trend in the capital, replies the tailor. Thank you for the praise. More importantly, who was the first to buy the thing he ordered, said the prince. The first prince of the empire, Richard Clermont. I'm sorry, your highness. All right, it came a day early anyway. Will it be ready tomorrow? He asked. Yes, replied the tailors. I wonder who wanted the prince's outfit, questioned Richard. The girl replied that another buyer wanted to keep the information secret. Ha, so it's a secret? Laughed Richard. He said, you know, Annette, how much he likes you. You may like you even more if you tell me, stepping closer to the girl. And she, of course, couldn't stand it and said Prince Hernan. The prince interjected. Hernan, amazingly, his brother knows nothing but battles. Thank you for telling me, Annette. The girl was upset that she had blabbed again. Richard thought, really, and even that very shirt? Richard was walking and wondering what was wrong with his brother, the prince. In his opinion, something very interesting seemed to be going on. Kerman Empire Mansion. Rinsel's room. Her sister Reki came in and asked, "How was your meeting with His Highness Hernan?" Rinzel replied that he was better than she thought. "He's not as scary as the rumors say. You might even say he's kind of cute." "Honey, really?" asked Reki. "Yes," replied Rinsel. "He also has a handsome face," Rinzel began to say, and then the girl's nose began to bleed. Reki saw it and screamed, "Rinsel, your nose is bleeding! I'll get a doctor!" Rinzel doesn't think the nosebleed was due to illness. She remembered how their conversation had ended. She had only managed to say, "Well, I mean, the thing that emphasizes your face, the shirt. You have a nice shirt," she said to the prince, and at the same time noticed and asked, "Are you not feeling well?" The prince replied, "Let's call it a day, you need to rest." She ended up surviving because she felt sick. But as she survived, she was very afraid of their meeting and didn't know how the conversation would go. She wanted to change the subject, but he must not have heard it, Rinsel thought. A new day, a lovely garden fit for the Duchy of Valencia. The prince said, "I am grateful that you came to meet me, even though it was a surprise visit to them." Rinsel replied, "Thank you." He seemed to hear clearly what Rinsel had said the first time they met. A little bit of history about Prince Hernan, the second prince of the Claremont Empire, Ermin Claremont. If Richard was like an empress, Hernan was like an emperor who possessed great physical strength. A seasoned soldier who ended the empire's civil war, but was only given the title of war demon and murder demon for doing so. In the novel, he was the villain who separated Richard and Riki. Though from Reki's point of view he was bad, thought our heroine who had reincarnated as Rinsel. Do killer demons look exactly like Hernan? Back to the garden and walks. Riesel noticed that basically only why. As they strolled through the garden, Riesel became suddenly ill. For some reason the strength in her legs had run out just now, and she was almost falling over. Already the prince turned around and asked the lady. All Rinsel had time to say was that she was falling, but at that moment the prince managed to pick her up. "Are you all right?" he asked. "Not bruised anywhere?" Rinsel looked up and said she was saved, a big thank you for helping. The prince just stood there looking at Ringe with deeply enamored eyes. "It looks like she's gone to a real paradise," Rinsel said. The prince asked, "What do you mean?" She replied that it was nothing much. "She is so thrilled that she can see up close the marvelous face of your highness." The girl herself didn't realize what she had just said, but she herself hadn't expected from what the prince was now doing. "Is that better?" he asked. Honestly, it scared Renzel, but when you have such beauty in front of your nose, it makes you want to do something. The girl ran her hands through his hair and began to say, "This place is heaven." The prince was surprised. He even asked, "Do you act so straightforward all the time?" It was unusual for him, as he had not interacted with girls before so intimately. "She is sincere with those who are sincere with her. Your face is very sincere," remarked Rinsel. He thinks she should be more careful and takes her hand away. The girl looked around and asked, "Is there anyone out there?" She felt that she could hardly stand anymore and said, to His Highness Hernan, that she no longer had the strength to walk. "Shall we finish our walk?" she said. No sooner had she uttered the last word than Hernan picked her up in his arms and asked, "Are you still not feeling well?" "No," she replied. She's the kind of person who can't take a long walk. Just thought I'd change the subject right away. It's better to pretend she has feelings for him, so she can get married sooner. Laying her head on his shoulder, she said his embrace felt so good. She's bound to succeed, she thought, if she keeps doing things at this pace. Asked, "Do you like it?" he asked, which felt very good in his arms. Hernan asked where we would go now, and eventually brought her to her room. Or rather, brought her to her room. "Can he really come in here?" asked the prince. The girl replied, "Yes." Aaron became very embarrassed and blushed. He had never been in a girl's room before. Rinsel thought it looked like it was his first time in a girl's room. "How can you be so sweet with embarrassment?" The prince let himself sit down next to Riesel and asked, "What do you think?" He still hadn't heard an answer. "I didn't think he was so eager for appreciation on her part," Rinsel began to reply. "That he has a really cool shirt. It looks natural in an avant-garde way, makes his face look even more expressive." The prince laughed. The face is expressive, he thought, but asked, "Maybe something else struck you?" "Well, and here," Rinsel thought. "If that's the case, I don't see the point of being shy anymore." Looking at his feet, she said, "Legs." The prince stood up abruptly and said he understood her. The girl asked, "Are you leaving already?" Or did she say something too direct? But the prince replied that he had a meeting with his family. "Can't help it then. Even a little sad, the girl said. After becoming Rinzel, she had only met people from the mansion, telling the prince to be careful on the way back and thanking him for listening to her request. A new relationship only with Ernan. Before leaving, the prince came over and stroked her head. Rinzel was surprised. She hadn't expected it. Saying lastly that next time the prince would come wearing clothes where his legs were visible, she laughed. The prince replied, "If you want, he will come. I'll see you then," she said to the prince. But he didn't turn around. She thought, is he really that shy about saying goodbye? That's the trouble. Originally it was all for Richard, but now it seems she really likes Ernan. When the prince left, the sisters gathered in the parlor to have tea. Rinzel said, "Prince Hernan stopped by his favorite store today and had his mantle bought out." "What?" asked Rinzel. Yes, and I think the shirt too," replied the sister. What did Rinzel think? Was it then the first time they met, when he was wearing a fancy shirt and a robe of red velvet? Rinzel thought Prince Hernan had no interest in fashion at all. "Exactly," Reka said. "Is it really for her sake? But why?" thought Rinzel. There were even rumors that Prince Hernan had some woman, Reka asked. Why would you ask such a thing? It seemed to her that she might know. It's just that Reka heard they were seen in the garden and the way she touched the prince's face, Reka laughed. "Who is it?" said an indignant Rinzel. "As the whole duchy is already aware of it," said Reka. Oh dear, thought Rinzel. She seems to have become a woman of strange rumors in a short period of time. Don't worry, Rizal will still be your husband. Thanks for the reassurance, she said. Reka, she must know, said Rinzel. The reason she has such an eye for Prince Hernan. What is it? Asked Reka. Answered her that she likes men with amazing faces. That's right, Reka said. Rinzel had met handsome men before. She wondered what she was even talking about and continued. That's why her heart beats faster only from handsome men. Oh, she thought. Her reputation in front of Reke is over. Earlier about that Sir Handsome, captain of the guard. Even then she kept saying, how handsome he is, she told Reke, and this time she seemed to like the same type. What? Asked Rinzel. Sir Handsome? Are you sure it's that man? She wondered. This is supposed to be Rinzel's memory in the novel, isn't it? It was more about Reka, so she knew little about her sister's relationship. Alas, Reke, she met that man before our heroine became omnipresent in Tellerindel, so she remembers nothing. What's why she can't even remember his face? And not just the faces of her family members, frightened. Reke noticed that Rinzel was frozen and had some strange eyes. She walked over and asked if she was okay. She shouldn't have said that. That's not the point. Anyway, the more she meets His Highness Hernan, the more she likes him, right? Asked Reka. Well, okay. She hopes she hasn't ruined her mood, and she's very glad Rinzel doesn't regret getting married. Instead of her, don't worry. She's forgiven everything because she's beautiful and kind to attractive people. Though that doesn't mean she only looks at looks, Rinzel said with a wink. Reke, replied her. But they're twins. Reke asked Rinzel to tell her about any problems. Otherwise she would be very upset if she hid anything. And the sister replied, yes, okay. Rindel looked at her twin sister Reka and thought that she didn't look terminally ill and had more active behavior than Rinzel. To other people, she may seem like a perfectly healthy girl, but she knows how hard it really is for her, the weak but strong heroine of the novel she supported. Sorry, Reka, but she can no longer tell her that she is no longer the Rinzel she knew. Rinzel, Reke is so worried about you. Where's the real Rinzel? The Emperor's estate. Everyone is gathered around the dinner table. Hernan, he had heard that you had been visiting the Duchy of Valencia a lot lately. What do you think of the lady who will be your bride? Asked the Emperor of the Empire. Clairmon Delta, Hernan's father, answered she seems to like him a lot. She said she fell in love with him at first sight. What a strange girl, my father said. Those around him laughed a little, covering his mouth with his hand. Should a father say such a thing to his son? Questioned Hernan. Though you are like him out of his splendor, yet he must not be so foolish, said the Emperor. But she loves him very much, answered Hernan. Hernan thought back to her words as she said she loved being in his arms. Your Highness, there is no point in doubting, Hernan thought. Well, did she like it so much about the prince? Empress Angel Clairmon, Hernan's mother, asked. He replied that she had said she liked his face, and next time, the prince set his feet and looked at his feet. Everyone was horrified. They have come this far, they thought. The Emperor said he was glad his son had no physical problems, but he was worried as a father. He replied that he was fine. Hernan, that's not the point, his mother said. That lady only values looks, but it's the soul that counts. Doesn't think she is, Hernan said. It wouldn't change anything, though. Maybe it's the first and last girl who could fall in love with him. The Emperor said, invite her to dinner. We need to set a date as soon as possible. Yes, she's a very nice girl, Hernan replied. When dinner was over, everyone dispersed, and Hernan followed his brother Richard. Turning around, Richard asked Hernan, "How long will you follow me? Speak up already. What do you want?" Hernan came to the point and asked how he could emphasize his legs. "So that's it? You were the one repeating after him and buying things for that girl?" Richard asked. Hernan realized there would be no answer, turned and walked away, thinking his stuff was good. "Okay," he said. "I'll handle it myself." But Richard yells, "Answer first, then leave." Richard wondered. Speaking of the Duchy of Valencia, which of the two girls does he like? That lady who keeps saying hello to him seems to be named Rinsel. "The sister's mansion, so everything is ready, mistress," the maid replied. "Wow, she's finished dressing up, and the sun is already set," the maid said to Randall as she held out her hand with a box and said, "What's in here is the present you spoke of." "Thank you," replied the girl. Coming into Rinsel's room, Reke asked, "Is this a present for Prince Hernan?" "What have you prepared, sister?" Reke asked. "Oil from the western region," she told her. "It seemed good. I wonder if Prince Hernan will like it. And there's one for family members too, I guess. But it'll do, won't it?" "It's enough." Rindel seemed to be up to no good, said to Reka. "Well, since His Highness was invited to dinner at the palace, His Highness sure liked her." Rinzel laughed and said, "Who knows? Nevertheless, be careful. Reke will wait for her return," her twin sister said. Getting into the carriage, Rinzel thought that Reke would be dining alone tonight. "It can't be like this," the girl thought. "She'll be lonely. We need to get back as soon as possible." Riesel is sitting in her father's study this morning. The girl asks about being called to the palace. "True," said the father. "Shouldn't she have a marriage of convenience with Prince Hernan? That's why she was invited to dine with his family," said the father. Rinsel thought it was lucky to see the groom's parents 3 days after meeting them so soon. He didn't want to delay any longer. "But it seems the palace wants to betroth you as soon as possible. By the way, why do you want to delay the wedding?" Rinsel asked. "There's a political purpose to this marriage, but it's not important enough to ignore your will," the daughter's father said. "He can't reject this marriage because of the emperor's decree." Rinziel thought so. In the novel, Reke asked, "Cancel everything." But the marriage was forced. The Duke could not stand up to the imperial family. The Duke was very worried because he cares about his daughters. "Don't worry so much, father. She told me she fell in love with Prince Hernan at our place at first sight. After meeting him in person, she liked him even more. Even though he had an indifferent face, there was a kind side to him. And a nice body," Rinzel thought to herself. "If he stands up as crown prince, there will be no regrets about a loveless marriage. She'll be able to get close to the imperial palace's vault, and then we can divorce. After that, she wants to fall in love with a man for whose sake will not be sorry even his life." So reasoned our protagonist, who fell into this novel. "Has she fallen in love with the prince's face to that extent?" the Duke asked. "Father, how do you know?" Rinsel asked. "Didn't she say she liked handsome boys, after meeting that handsome knight?" laughed the Duke. "Has there been such a thing?" Rinsel asked. She wondered how far the rumors about her taste in men went. "His Highness Hernan has outstanding looks," laughed his father. Presently Rinsel rode in the carriage and pondered. If she had known that everything had been in the know for a long time, she would have touched him much more. She is grateful that the Duke is concerned about her. But Hernan is not such a bad person. He's very sincere. He originally became a villain because he was tipped off by that jerk. Although in the original story, Hernan made a marriage of convenience without love. He wanted to make his wife Reke happy. He was not in love, but had an interest. However, he went to another person for advice because he was inexperienced in romantic relationships. And that was his personal assistant, Gact. The advice he gave, like, pluck out the eyes of all those who look at your wife. Or you should express love with your body, not with words. It was nothing. But Hernan believed every word. They talked little. The misunderstandings grew more and more, and so the prince became a villain. The protagonist of the story didn't know that at all, Rinzel thought. The carriage pulled up to the palace where the prince lives. Tonight will be her last performance. As she was getting out of the carriage, Rinsel began to feel ill. She said that if she fell, she would hit her head and die. And then at this point, a servant girl managed to pick her up, saying, "Don't say that. She can't bury her mistress here." "Ah, mistress, you're all right," the maid said, barely able to get down those steps. "Definitely going to survive," Randall said, playing tricks on her again. "She's already scared enough that you might fall." Once down from the carriage, Rinsel seemed to be doing a little better. She looked around and asked, "Why is no one here?" The maid ran to call someone. Rinsel stayed by the carriage. Renzel was left waiting. It was a cool evening, and she felt a little cold. Rinsel accidentally stepped on the edge of her dress and miscalculated her strength, and fell. Good thing there was grass, she thought. She felt both amused and a little hurt. "It's not long to die like that. It hurt a bit." Tears were flowing. She turned and saw a man of some sort. A strange face, she thought. "Who are you?" Rinzel asked the guy with the blonde white hair. The guy asked, "Why are you crying?" That same guy turned out to be Hernan's brother Richard. Rinzel noticed that he had a familiar shirt. She'd seen it somewhere. This is the one R wore last time she was here. But it looks different on this guy. It looks good on him in its own way too. So he asked, "Why are you crying?" Another sigh and she said, "Oh, it's a weird situation. She fell and twisted her ankle, that's why it hurts so much." The guy held out a handkerchief to her and said, "Wipe your tears. It hurts so much that you even cried. Maybe you should call the court physician." "It's okay, don't laugh, please. And also so polite," she added. "And he hits himself a lot too. He's always so embarrassed to show his pain that he wrinkles his face. A lot of people might misunderstand him. They even say he's arrogant or something, like he's only polite to the ladies." "He always tries to be polite to everyone," Richard said. "Of course it affects women to a slightly greater extent, as it does now." "Ha ha," said Rinzel. "The palace's handsome man, polite to women. Could it be a prince?" Richard thought of the girl. "He thought it would be sad for you to cry alone," said Richard. "But is he not allowed to be here?" replied Rinzel. "What's your name?" Richard asked the girl. Answered Rinzel Valencia. "That's what I thought. Didn't you?" Richard said. In the background a servant girl was running and shouting, "Mistress! Mistress! Where are you?" Mistress raised her hand and said, "Minnie, she is here." "Looks like your escort has arrived," Richard replied. The boy stood up and said they would see each other later, Lady Rinzel. A maid came running in and asked, "Mistress, what happened?" "She just fell," Rinzel replied. "No injuries anywhere." The maid helped the lady up and said that she would have to walk a little. The girl said, "Yes. Where are we going now?" "This is Prince Richard's palace. Prince Hernan's palace is across the street. Rishark Lerman, Hernan's brother and a man who loves the river. The main character in this world wears the same clothes as Hernan, and he's on good terms with his younger brother. But things weren't so rosy in the novel, if she remembers correctly." Upon entering the mansion, the girl greeted everyone and introduced herself. "That her name is Rinzel Valencia. Glad to meet you. Grateful to have accepted our sudden invitation," Hernan's father said. "After hearing Hernan's stories, he was eager to meet you." "Yes," Rinzel replied and thought, "What stories are they already telling the prince? Or has he told something strange about me?" "Richard Lerman, nice to meet you, Lady Rinzel," said the guy who had already seen her in the garden. She knew it was Richard, the protagonist of their favorite river. Something about him pretending they don't know each other, thought Rinzel. "Your Highness Richard, it is an honor to meet you," Richard said, and then he was shoved by his brother Vernon with an elbow. "How good of them all to meet, Prince Hernan," Rinzel said. "You're still as sincere," Hernan said, as he had been when they met. "Lady, don't just stand there like that. Have a seat," Mom said, turning to Rinzel. "It is an honor to meet you, Empress," the girl replied. She took a seat and bowed to greet. The table was set, and there were many delicious dishes. Everyone sat down and began to eat. "And so, Lady Rinzel, you have decided to marry Prince Hernan?" Seeing his face, the Emperor asked. Rinzel coughed. Hernan immediately walked over to her and asked, "Are you in pain?" And she began to ask him quietly, "How do your parents know of such a thing, Your Highness? Did you really tell your family that she squeezed, that is, touched, your face?" "Is there a problem with that?" Hernan asked. "Lady Rinzel, you need not be so frightened. She is very fond of honest people," replied the Empress. "Empress, what are you saying?" Rinzel said. "Richard said he supports your taste, but you know you can't infringe on it." "What? Yes. What have they made of her?" thought the girl. Rinzel glared. She was Rishara while she was indignant at her thoughts, what they had made up about her, when Hernan came over and closed her eyes so she wouldn't see. "The prince said you shouldn't stare at Richard like that." It was the first time Rinzel had seen such a face on Hernan. He wasn't nicknamed the Demon of War for nothing, though. "Your Highness Hernan, she will be your bride." "His jealousy is good to see," Rinzel said. "You two seem to have a good relationship," said the Emperor. "Thank you for your words, Your Majesty," Rinzel replied. "He doesn't mind honesty either, Lady Rinzel, and it's not because he's an exact replica of it," the Emperor said. But just like the Empress said, she is worried that the lady might turn out to be someone who only cares about appearance, the Emperor added to what was said. After hearing those words, Rinzel thought that it wouldn't work that way. She should finalize her image. "There is a saying, Your Majesty. The face is the mirror of the soul. It shows every trace of character and life. His Highness Hernan is an excellent military man who has been to many battlefields. His face shows a strong sense of power that suppresses other people, however. She sees not only those features, but also his childlike innocence, the way he picked out his clothes to impress her. Warmth is like the sun because he took care of a weak girl. It's written all over his face that Hernan is an honest and soft-hearted man. even though they've only seen each other twice. How could she not like a man with such a beautiful face? Isn't that right, Your Highness Hernan? Rinsel said with a wink. The prince got upset at such words, which he had never heard before. He seemed very sweet in this situation. Not only was the prince upset that even the empress wept and said that even she, as a mother, was ashamed. She couldn't say such words to Erden. You are the first girl to see the prince's true face, for she will endeavor to know him better, Your Majesty the Empress, she said. And the emperor repeated again. So the face is a mirror. Good words, he added. When their tea party was over, because the girl was very tired on the way, even to her parents. But next time, bring a present only for him. Why is he being so nice? Is this really the first time he's gotten a gift from a girl? Rinsel thought. By the way, if you think just for a moment, why did Richard have such a sad expression on his face? The prince said he wanted to ask the girl something. Are you really okay with being with him? He doesn't know how to talk to people, especially girls. His excessive honesty might get her into trouble, and he might go off to the battlefield again, the prince said. Do you mind? Repeated Prince Hernan. Did he still think that? Rinsel said. That you are inept, so you will be much more careful. You're honest, so you won't lie to her. And since you think you're going to go to the battlefield, you'll appreciate your time with her even more. Isn't she right? That's no reason not to neglect. What is she to do with this nice man? Rinsel, you're the first girl. No, basically the first person to make him feel this way. Yes, she's a rarity, she replied. You're right. Weren't afraid of him at all. So he wants to do everything he can for her. Your Highness, in that case you will owe her one favor, the prince said. All right, I promise. You were so quick to agree, even though you don't know what she'll ask for. Would you even give your life for her? Rinsel asked. Rinsel, he's been through countless wars. He's faced death since he was a child, so it's not new to him. He can die for you, Hernan said. How is it? He's willing to risk his life for someone he's known for a few days. Rinsel thought. Because he's a demon of war, the one that death follows. Does that mean you love her so much that you're willing to risk your life? And then came the very moment in which Hernan kissed her on the forehead. Is that enough as an answer? Asked the prince, when he had already donned Rinsel de carriage. She asked indignantly, Why didn't you kiss me? It was the most opportune moment. She was ready, but the prince said, That we'll leave it for another time. When he had put Rinsel into the carriage and it had gone, the prince returned to his chamber, called his assistant Huck, and asked him. He wants to know details about the Duchy of Valencia, particularly Rinzel. What kind of clothes does she like? What kind of food does she like? What kind of men? And her menu from last night. Your Highness, people with such intentions are called stalkers. You'd better ask the lady herself. Okay, he'll find out as soon as he can, Deputy Gack said. And one more thing, added the prince. We should study what kind of pants Richard wears most often. Mistress, what kind of person is she to put him through such an ordeal? If it's His Highness's appearance, then it's not a good person. Thus, Huck had a misunderstanding. New this season. Clothes for summer, a blue stone bracelet that adds coolness, drop earrings that have become popular because of His Highness. Dress a little warmer in the summer and dress lighter in the winter. She has prepared outfits in the style of Prince Richard, said Annette. As expected of Annette, she knows everything Richard wants. Of course. The fashion world is headed by Your Highness, the girl replied, somehow to whom she introduced herself. Such an honor. You can bring the pants he likes to wear lately, Richard said. Punish her, Your Highness! Richard shouted to Annette. What is this suddenness? What's all the panic and screaming? Asked the prince. Could it be Hernan again? I'm sorry, Your Highness, there was nowhere else to go. What are you yelling for? Yes, indeed, how he looked last time. Strangely hunting for his pants already. Prince Hernan seems to have taken an interest in fashion lately. But that usually happens to men. Because of the opposite sex, Annette said. And Richard thought, because of Rinsel Valencia, to be exact. By the way, and originally his soulmate was not Rinsel, said the prince, but another girl. She was wrong to start talking about Prince Hernan's private affairs. I'm sorry, Annette said. But the prince interrogated her. Agree, what did you mean to say? Rinsel's room. The girl raised her hand up faintly and said, Minnie, don't tell anyone about her demise. You can't do that, Mistress Rinsel. Don't leave her alone, said Minnie. You can have half of her inheritance, said Mistress. Don't say that, replied the maid. You have that right because you are in fact the illegitimate daughter of a duke. Today's play is to tell the secret of your birth before you die. Mistress, your lines sound like they're from some novel, said the maid Minnie. It is nothing of the sort. This is the duke's great secret, the secret of birth. I wonder. Then next time, let's solve the sister's secret with you together, said maid Minnie. She actually has a big secret. How will Reich react to it, I wonder? Mistress, are you no longer homesick? She asked me. It's all right. You can go. experiencing the effects of the imperial palace visit. Seems to have been affected by her fall on the grass as well. Mistress Rindell, you have a guest to see you. A guest who barely sat on the bed, Rinzel said. Who could it be? His Highness Hernan. And then a guy walks into the room and says, I beg your pardon, Lady Rinsel, but that's not Hernan. The guy says, I'm Richard Rinsel, and when she saw him she was very much surprised. She's not feeling well, so she meets you like this, in bed. She asked to be understood in her room, said he. How are you even here? What did Rinsel think as she looked at the prince? Why did he have this look on his face that was very strange, like angry? Are you so ill that you can't even walk to the living room? Asked Richard. Her whole body ached. There was no trace of yesterday's overexertion and the fall on the grass. The prince in the balloon asked, Have you been crying again? It didn't hurt to that degree, Rinsel said. Walking over to her, he stroked her head the way her Nan had done. Your Highness Richard, she has not washed her hair, so she asks that you remove your hand from her head. You should have said so at once or he'll wonder what it smells like. Well, not to this extent, she said. It seems like it's just a joke, and that's the side that Reich loves. She decided to ask him. Today he went to his favorite store and heard something. He came to share the news. Where to start the conversation, he thought. A few days ago, someone started repeating his style and redeeming his clothes. Naturally, we all realize who he's talking about, Prince Hernan. So he's been copying Prince Richard all this time, Rinzel thought, but asked, Didn't you share clothes because of good brotherly relations? Doesn't say such terrible things, Richard said. Hernan bought his pants this time. Are you sure you two are getting along well? She asked. And that's where he also heard that Rinsel and Hernan's marriage of convenience should have gone to your sister Rika, Riesel coughed. Maid, said Mistress, can I get you something to drink? Are you all right? The prince asked. Her body began to shake with surprise. Breathe slowly, Prince Richard said. At that moment, Reich, Rinsel's sister, walks into the room and sees your Highness Richard and Rinsel by his side. Reich just froze with Rinsel's words. Why you? She didn't know what to just think or say next. She at once accumulated tears of resentment and misunderstanding, for her sister knows the feelings she has for Prince Richard. Rinzel, when she saw her sister, shouted, Reich! But the girl ran out of the room. The cough still wouldn't go away. We should go to her when the coughing settles down, Rinsel thought. Rinzel, about you. Do you like living in the duchy? Asked the prince. And what do you mean by that? Asked Rinzel. Why did Lady Reich act as if she took offense? He asked, but could not say Rinsel, because she loves you. For it is a great mystery. At the same moment, Reich has a lot of thoughts in her head. She saw pictures of Rinsel and Richard sitting together, and imagines them not talking. How Rinsel says, Your Highness. She's sick, and the prince answers her, Rinsel, how are you feeling? So her sister has arranged a secret rendezvous with her favorite person, Rika thought. In Rinsel's room, she says that maybe her sister was shocked because Rinsel is not with Prince Hernan, but in a room with another man. What difference does it make in your sister who you are with? Does it matter? She is asked by Prince Richard. She has no male acquaintances with whom she has had intimate relations, Your Highness Richard. It's your own business anyway, the prince said. Who to be with, where to be. It wouldn't make sense for her to be so surprised. He's right about something, Rinsel thought. Your Highness Richard, don't mind it. It's our problem with her. Are you really all right? The prince asked. Sure you're happy here? Yes. What do you mean? Asked Rinsel. That bruise on your shoulder. Maybe you're getting beaten up or something, Lady Reich. You're in her way because things aren't going according to her plan. Are you sure it isn't? Walking up to Rinsel, the prince asked. What, Your Highness? It seems to her that you misunderstood, that he misunderstood. Your bruises are evidence of violence. There was no violence of any kind, Rinsel said. So why are you in this state? She certainly doesn't think it's fair either. You were even forced to marry Hernan, Rinsel said. Who forced her? Why didn't he realize such obvious things right away? It's only natural that she doesn't want to marry a war demon. If it's violence, he's angry and he might help her get out of here. Her life is perfect. What kind of help is that? He'd better fix the misunderstanding with Reich, thought Rinsel. Even with that attitude, the prince said. But he was interrupted by Rinsel and said, That's enough, Your Highness. She really is fine. You're still protecting your family. Come on. Prove if he's wrong or he won't believe it, he tells him again. They're done talking today. It'll be more trouble if we let him go now, thought Rinsel. Minnie's maid enters the room. Mistress, it's already past, the girl asks. Minnie, hurry up and help, Mistress said and started to get out of bed. First and foremost, she needs to resolve the misunderstanding with Reich. The backyard of the Duchy of Valencia, garden. There are flowers growing here that are grown by the river. In the original novel, she went to the greenhouse every time she was uncomfortable. Maid Minnie put her arm around Rinsel and led her to this garden. She thought that Mistress was so ill that she could hardly move her legs. When Rinsel saw her sister, she said to the river, "Don't go. It was hard for her to get here." Rike, when she saw Rinsel, started to walk away. She came on foot. "Minnie, you can let go," she said to Rinsel in an orderly manner. Prince Richard had just come in. He was saying strange things, and he was just tapping her back when she coughed. Walking over to her sister, Rinsel explained everything to her. "Sorry," said the river. Asked Rinsel, "We should be more affectionate." Riesel said that she really liked looking at the face of a smiling, beautiful girl. "Do you hate me?" asked Reke. Rinsel, she carelessly misunderstood her, and there was a misunderstanding. "Even knowing you're not one of those acting like that," Reka said. "She understands everything," Rinsel replied. There was nothing she could do about the feelings that came over her, so it's all Prince Richard's fault. But why did Prince Richard come to Rinsel? Wanting to know if she was being bullied or not in the duchy, Reke asked. "Thinks you're being bullied instead of cared for? After seeing a bruised shoulder and coughing, plus helplessness?" "He wouldn't listen," shouted Rinsel, though she denied everything. "His Highness has a stubborn temper," Reke said. Rinsel wondered, because Reke is in the know, because she knows all his problems, because she loves him, right? "Rike is very fond of Prince Reshar," Reke said. It was just that a shroud of jealousy had fallen over her eyes. She was sorry. "Don't cry," said Sister Rinsel. Her good Reke, the girl, wiping away her tears, smiled. They were tears of regret towards Rinsel, and disappointment in herself for being jealous and doubting her own sister. The girls embraced. She knows what's on Reke's mind, Rinsel thought. That's how much she's in love with Reshar. All that's left is to figure out how to dispel the silly misunderstanding with Reshar, Rinsel thought. That's definitely the only way left, the girl thought. Reke needs to meet the lion face to face, Rinsel said. The next day, a guest has arrived. Hernan arrived a little earlier. Your Highness, right? He's even more handsome today, she thought. Even his clothes had been picked out perfectly. What's the matter with you? Are you in pain about something? He asked. Her heart aches because you're too beautiful. If she dies today, it will be because of him, and laughed. You say very nice things. Well, death is best not joked about, said the prince. By the way, Your Highness, she took care of her appearance today as well. What do you think? Mistress, if you walk and see a puddle on the ground, say hello to it because it's ice melted in the form of your feet, said the maid Minnie, as they discussed what Mistress would wear. Hernan will definitely have a soft spot for this one. Of course he would. He took it and tied his shirt around her waist. Because lots of extra eyes, he said. Why shut everything down? Rinsel shrieked. She was hoping to show you that there are no other people here now. The walk is just for you. Do you really like the understated style? Rinsel asked. The prince said if you want to show it to him, it will only be where they will be alone, taking her in his arms, he said. So he doesn't mind looking, Rinsel thought, but replied, Yes, Your Highness. And he doesn't care about style as long as it's worn on her. Even if she's in rags, things don't matter. What matters is the person. Even in rags, you will be beautiful, the prince said. How's that? Is that the answer you were waiting to hear? It's exactly like that, Rinsel said. Then the prince decided to ask, How are my pants, Your Highness? These pants suit you very well, Rinsel replied. They look much more refined than the wide ones, but the last ones didn't look bad either. With a beautiful face and body, there isn't a thing that wouldn't suit you. Thank you for caring, replied the prince. Thank you for paying special attention to it, Rinsel replied. After walking a little way, the prince asked Rinsel, Where should we go? To her room, said the girl. And you are very generous today. The aide, entering the room when they all came in together, said that Your Highness, he would be waiting nearby, bowed, and left. Is that your assistant? Asked the girl. He's the one responsible for making Hernan a villain, thought Rinsel. She thinks it's best not to listen to what the aide says. But the prince said that Gact had been helping him with everything for a long time. She's too hasty, thought Rinsel. That's right. She's a bride of convenience he's known for a few days after all. And Hact has been serving Hernan for years. He trusts him more than he trusts her, right? That's what she's saying, it's not about everything. Thinks that listening to what an assistant says regarding romantic relationships is not worth it. Rinsel, Gact is someone he trusts, but she feels like he's completely clueless about such things. If he doesn't know something, he will ask her. Don't be disappointed. And this is definitely a war demon looking into the prince's face, Rinsel thought. Thank you for those words, Your Highness. And what clothes you want to see next time, he doesn't know, hasn't decided yet, offered to decide him together. Then the prince replied, Good offer, but wait. He thought he saw someone standing outside the room. He decided to check it out. Toward the door, he opened it sharply. Well, there was no one there. Already gone, he said. Maybe it's her maid Minnie or your assistant Gact, Rinzel said. They're in the parlor, the prince replied. Well then maybe they are other servants. Reki was standing outside the door. She freed all the maids. Who could it be? Did you hear what you heard? It was Rinzel. But they seem to be doing well, Reki said, walking away from the door. Everything is going right according to plan. She would definitely succeed this time, whatever the sacrifice. She must definitely survive, the girl said. This is the 4th time they've been in contact, but he's learned enough in that time. How inexperienced he is, thought Rinzel. It wasn't just the council that was the problem. Oh God, this is so crazy. Rinzel decided to say that Minnie's cheeks were very soft, and the prince repeated it when the maid came in. He asked Minnie, "They say your cheeks are too soft, more like dough. If you think back, when he was young, he used to beat the dough with his fists for practice because a child's hands are too weak," the prince said. Rinzel noticed that he wilted at the fact that he had startled Minnie the maid. She laughed. He didn't say it to scare her. Yes, I know, Rinzel replied. He has always lived in such delusions. He said he had to go, the prince replied. To dinner again? Asked the girl. Does it have to be? And took his hand. He wished he could stay too. His Majesty is a man who takes promises seriously, so I couldn't even imagine how angry he would get. Because at the evening dinner, everyone must definitely attend. Although when she saw him, the emperor seemed like a kindly man. Your Highness, could we meet together, all 4 of us? My sister and I, and you and Richard? And the reason for that? Asked the prince. What is the purpose of us all meeting together? She needs to sort out the misunderstandings that have arisen more quickly, the girl thought. So she replied that it would be a friendly meeting. We're all going to be one big family together. It seems like it would be better. Everyone make friends in advance. Family, thought Good. He'll prepare a place for them. He likes the word family so much, Rinzel thought. She answered him, Thank you. He really should be on his way. You don't have to see me off, the prince said. Thank you for your concern. Be careful on the way back, muttered Rinzel. Every so often Hernan's shoulders would appear so broad, the girl noticed as he walked away, and his waist, in comparison, was already much more so with those shoulders. Your Highness, it will be good if the outfit includes 3 things, the girl said. The prince turned around and asked again. 3? She would tell the reason next time. Okay, then he'll listen. When the prince wanted to leave, he noticed Richard's thing lying there. Why is it here? After the evening meal, Hernan's entire family is gathered around the table. His father asks him a question. Have you seen Lady Rinzel today too? No, it is better to call her sister-in-law, said the emperor. Hernan noticed that her father took a liking to her. When dinner was over, Hernan went to his room. His brother Richard caught up with him on the way. But Hernan ignored his brother, and the latter was very angry. What is it to you, Richard? Said Hernan. Tell me only briefly. Your pants look familiar to him. You're not the only one who goes to the capital's stores, Hernan told his brother. What will you repeat after him next time? Asked Richard. He said, You, Richard, you've gotten angry. Have you lost all shame? Prefers not to take what he has reserved. Of course he will. He's definitely not going to take them, I thought, and my spirits lifted. Okay, he didn't call his brother because of his clothes. This conversation concerns Lady Rinzel, Richard said. Hernan was very surprised. Rinzel, what's wrong with her? Hurry up and tell me. Now there was an urge to listen to him, Richard said. His original bride was supposed to be Reike. Did he know that? But Hernan was not surprised. He had even heard in person. He didn't think it was strange, Richard asked. Hernan said, What's weird about it? Lady Randall has bruises all over her body that Hernan asked. So don't go around telling fate faster, Hernan said. Lady Rendell seems to be being abused, said Richard. He didn't want to say it to his face. But it seems the river didn't want to marry him, so they made her do it. And the bruises were caused by a family member beating her. Violence by the Ringel family changing the bride, said Richard. But he remembered saying that she fell in love with him at first sight. She's an honest girl, so she wouldn't lie to him, and she could have told him right away. You can check it out. Hernan said it himself. By the way, Richard will have time tomorrow. Rinzel, him, you, Lady Reek would like to get together as a foursome. But Richard replied, No, there's no time. If there is no time, we must find it, said Hernan firmly. And without any excuse, he went away. And after dinner, he said, The decider yells at him. His opinion doesn't interest you at all. Fine. All right, gotta put something on. Gotta go to Mont Blanc. Richard turned around and went to pack. The next day. Arriving at the store, Richard greeted Annette. Oh, you've come, said the girl. Richard said, Yes. What is there today? Any new products? Yeah, here he is deciding to think about buying a new tea, I rejoiced and said. But that's good. Here's a whole lot of choice. Lots of great threesomes came in. She was going to organize everything and show. Really? Said Richard. Then he got here just in time. After all the watching of all the threesomes, he made up his mind. And he said, great, he's taking this one. He has an important meeting tomorrow. Did you send it to him? Yes, tonight. And now he has business to attend to. He'll go. Yes, sir, don't worry, goodbye. As soon as Richard left, literally from around the corner, Hernan popped out and said that he too wanted Annette's same blue tea. She knew it, Annette said. Your Highness Richard used it today too, Prince Hernan. The next day, madam, you received a letter from the Imperial Palace. The servant Minnie thought that, or should I say a love note rather than a letter. What kind of note? Laughed Arundel. An ordinary letter. From the roof, the letter lady began to read. Lady Rinzel, this is Hernan. The meeting you requested will take place tomorrow afternoon, closer to 4 o'clock. You may wait at the duchy. They will be here. How nice to be able to resolve issues very quickly, thought Rinzel. The maid said, Mistress, since you are awake, please drink the medicine. Honestly, she doesn't feel like he's making her feel any better, Rinzel thought. Rather, it makes her feel even weaker. Well, it's better than not drinking anything at all. You'll go on sleeping. Yes, so that Yes, she'll sleep until Reke gets back. I think she was going to a tea party. Unlike Rinzel, Reke often went to social gatherings. Her strength didn't fade during the day, even after walks and entertainment, only her weak heart. She hasn't been out of bed lately, she thought a little enviously. No, you have to chase those bad thoughts away. You have to pull yourself together. How can someone so cute be jealous of her own sister? Minnie, do you think she can get healthy? Rinzel asked the maid. Maid Minnie was very surprised. Mistress, why do you say that? She just said, Don't cry. Why are you crying? It's her bedtime. You rest too. Am I good? Rinzel asked. When Rinzel fell asleep, she was transported to some place, a white spatial place. She couldn't figure out where she was. Only a little later, across from her, she saw herself. That's me, she said. But only she was lying dead. No, she was here, the real one. She's dead. Why did Reek die in the novel? Renzel is awake. She doesn't feel well. You shouldn't have slept after taking the medicine. The girl started coughing, and when she looked at her hand, she saw blood. Rendel came to Rika's room in tears. This is the first time something like this has happened, Reek said. She is very worried. Reek felt similar pain too, Renzel thought. You know, Randall? She can't stand it sometimes. She gets scared that she's going to be all alone in the world. It seems like you're going to leave her soon and go somewhere where she can't find it, Reek said. Rinsel hugged her sister and told her she wasn't leaving. She can't just leave. Can she be left behind? Her favorite sister, Rek. If she can inhabit a body and cough up blood instead of Rekka, she's willing to relive it many times to ease her pain. She wiped away Reki's tears and told her that she was really okay and everything would be fine. You don't have to worry about anything. What will they do if her face swells with tears? They still have a meeting to go to. We should start getting ready now. Rinzel, if you have something that hurts, she should tell Rekka about it right away.